Welcome to this week's Media Week. We're reporting from China on the media relations between Australia and our largest trading partner.
We're at the Imperial Springs International Resort. We're also joined by Jeff Elliott, business editor for The Australian. Welcome, Jeff.
James, yeah, thank you.
Big anniversary this year, although it's not until a little bit later in the year. We'll give a bit of a preview now. Gough Whitlam was here 40 years ago.
That's right.
Mao Zedong, Chow and Lai. Quite a photo opportunity. I guess we'll be hearing a lot about that in The Australian and I guess on Sky News and Sky Business later this year. Yeah,
well, look, it's a big that's a big policy issue. In fact, the government's currently working on a white paper. Ken Henry's involved in that on sort of Australia's position in the Asia century, if you like. The Australian, in fact, and the Wall Street Journal have a summit on September 14 on Australia and China's century. You know, there is a lot of activity, obviously, around this. I mean, it just reflects a really seismic sort of economic shift in the world, as we all know, is happening as we speak around the massive growth in the China economic engine. Now, we've seen a little slowdown lately, which people get a bit worried about, but really the sort of long-term trend for China is a lot of growth. I mean, you've got 300 million people moving from the countryside to the cities over the next 10 years or so. That requires a sort of a vested interest too from the party here in order to maintain a level of growth as these people move into the cities. So, you know, for Australia, it is about iron ore and coal exports particularly, but it's also about deepening the relationship and sort of understanding the two countries better in terms of culture.
Jeff, we're here at the Australia-China Media Forum, and something that was very clear in the discussions that we've had across a number of sessions today is the need to deepen the ties between Australia and China. The Chinese people see these kinds of forums that we've been at as really key to doing that and achieving that. What do you think the Australian delegation got out of it? Did you take away new insights into how we can actually deepen the relationship? Because how is obviously the really big question here.
Yeah, look, I think there's some fundamental hurdles we all need to get over in terms of the relationship, and particularly from a media point of view is obviously the view that the Chinese media is very much controlled by the party. And we heard a lot about that today. In fact, there were some questions asked about that at the forum, and really, I guess, less than effusive answers around what that meant, although we did hear some comments around the increasing willingness from Chinese media to hold government to account, and I think that's a very good thing, including, for instance, some of the coal mine disasters where we've seen Chinese reporters quite bravely taking on the official stats, you know, and as we were told, you know, journalists standing by the mine, staying there and counting the bodies that come out in order to contradict the official stats. I mean, these are really interesting comments being made at a forum like this, but we also heard some pretty, you know, aggressive comments from, you know, regular journalists in a way about Australia's strategic relationship with America, and it wasn't seen too well or too kindly by the Chinese public. You know, that was an interesting comment to make about a strategic relationship from a journalist from the People's Daily, which is obviously a fairly critical organ of the party. So, you know, we're seeing some issues raised around, particularly, I guess, the Obama administration's willingness to do more sort of military arrangements with the Gillard government, particularly the announcement of more cooperation through the base in Darwin. That has been noticed here, among a few other things like the Huawei decision, which saw Huawei, the technology company, telecommunications company owned by the Chinese, was blocked on bidding for the NBN because of ASIO security concerns. That was raised as an issue by journalists here, which, you know, just at a level, you know, was kind of interesting to hear that sort of dialogue. But you know, at the end, there's a lot of commonality too around some of the challenges Chinese media face with new media, and the fact that Twitter is sort of, you know, creating new issues of distribution for media and how we handle it.
Yeah, but do you sort of dismiss then the concerns that some of the Chinese delegates seem to express that maybe we could be doing a better job of reporting on China? And
yeah, I do. I mean, I think it's really. I think culturally, you know, we as more of an Anglosphere kind of country, you know, over the years we know Washington well, we know the UK well, and Europe. I think there's you know, a lot of gaps to bridge in terms of our, you know, cultural understanding of China. I mean, obviously language is one issue, but you know, we heard a lot of eloquent speakers today, you know, including former Ambassador Jeff Raby, about the complexities of the relationship and how we can better manage it. And you know, no doubt, you know, we have a historical security relationship with the United States, but our economic interest is increasingly tied to China. So you know, there's there's an interesting challenge there. And Jeff Raby made the point, in fact, that Australia has been seen in the past as a sort of a valuable and trusted interlocutor between Beijing and Washington. And he made what I thought was a veiled criticism about the fact that of the Gillard government, that maybe we're not seen like that so much anymore. And I think perhaps there is some commentary around on some of the strategic diplomatic blunders that might have been made around some of the announcements with regards to military cooperation with the United States, for instance.
Sure. That although there was that comment I think Raby made too, that Australian commercial TV has almost turned its back on China in a way. There's no correspondence based here anymore. Yeah. And we do get, I think, just this weekend, past CCTV has been broadcast 24/7, I think, on the Foxtel platform, which is interesting. Guangdong TV, the biggest television station in the province we're in, also coming to Australia later this year. So there's interesting exchanges going on.
Yeah, and look, we have a Beijing correspondent. A country the size of China, if resources are unlimited, you'd certainly want to have more correspondence here, no doubt about that. But the sort of cross-programming relationship is a really interesting one, and it's a challenge for Angelo Frangopoulos, to the head of Australia News Channel, to integrate these platforms and fully support what he's trying to do. I think it's a really interesting development, and to get these forums and summits going is a real key to how we progress. But there's challenges. I mean, I'm a former Washington correspondent and fully support the security alliance with the US. I think it's a very important piece of the strategic infrastructure for Australia. But also note that that we need to better understand the Chinese and to develop better cultural understanding around this. As some have said, we're getting more out of the China relationship than they are. I mean, that was another controversy that sort of came up today.
In terms of cultural understandings, I think something that I picked up quite strongly today was the different way in which the Chinese view the responsibility of journalists and the way that they report things. There was a comment made right at the end of the last session of the day, almost saying that it's the responsibility not to be negative. Not to be too negative if you're a journalist in China. An admission that that's kind of evolving. But in some sense, we go out to be negative because we want to challenge the authorities, we want to challenge the stories that are out there.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think about that. Tell us.
I mean, I think still, in fact, I think it was maybe Jeff Raby that made the point too, that there's still those stories that will inform a prejudice that get a lot of popularity in the Chinese media too. So, for instance, shark attacks or weird stories about kangaroos jumping down the street or crocodile attacks or whatever. I mean, I think that still exists. I mean, look, I think are we too negative in Australian media? I mean, I think culturally we challenge authority constantly. I mean, that's what Australians do, and we enjoy a good argument, but we enjoy perhaps sort of settling those differences later on in the day. So I mean, it's and then again, that sort of comment was made by some of our friends today, trying to explain the difference in the way that we go about things, including like at a forum like this, that we should all be able to speak relatively freely. It doesn't mean that we're not going to be friends, and in fact that's the way the relationship with Washington works on many levels. That you speak fiercely and frankly to your counterparts with the knowledge that you have a shared value system.
And the Chinese delegate addressed that, I guess, too, when he was asked a question about social media. And that's how he got onto the topic, I think, of journalist responsibility. And you sort of brought up the interesting thing, that perhaps if that is an issue in Australia, it could be with some of the online commentary.
Yeah, well, I think we see an exaggeration and almost a caricature of some issues through Twitter, for instance, and some of the blogs. I'll be mercilessly attacked now on Twitter and the blogs for daring to suggest that they might not be as professional about the way they do things. But I've been on the receiving end of just commentary and stuff that really is not grounded in sort of the reality of the sort of day-to-day jobs we do. So I think it's an issue in Australia, but then nor would I suggest that we should sort of clamp down on the distribution of new media systems. I mean, I think it'll find its level. We just all have to work with it.
And then just finally, maybe I got a feeling that there was quite some interest in the problems we're having in print media, particularly grappling with our future. And you get a feeling that there may be issues that haven't quite raised their head yet here, to the extent back home we're a little bit more business focused. We've got business models that we've got smaller circulations, smaller audiences, and those problems haven't come here yet, but no doubt they will.
I think it was the local Guangdong newspaper had mentioned and had taken a keen interest in the cuts that had been announced in Australia.
He knew the facts,
he knew the numbers, he knew that Fairfax Media had cut 1,900 jobs, specifically mentioned the number, and then also noted that digital revenues at Fairfax were somewhere around 15%. And he said, as opposed to where we're at, which we're at 5% digital revenues, obviously the magnitude of numbers would be much bigger, I'd say. But nonetheless, he was making the point, well, maybe we need to learn because maybe Australia's at the leading edge of something coming down the pipe. I think I was speaking to a number of the delegates just sort of offline, talking about the challenges that they face as well. When I said that the fact that our commercial media operations are under such strain that that there is these job losses being announced, and that God forbid if it continues going the way it does and there's no restructuring, some of these companies can disappear or at least be broken up. He sort of seems, suggested there was some, appeared to be astonished by that fact, because I don't think that's necessarily the commercial pressure that they feel here in the media industry, given that it's basically state-run.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Jeff Elliott, thank you very much for joining us on Mediaweek. We appreciate it. From Guangzhou, from the beautiful Imperial Springs.
Yeah, indeed.
And do stay with us here on Mediaweek. Coming up, more interviews from the delegates at the Australia-China Media Forum, reporting to you from China.